Corporal Victoria Caney endured months of harassment from her male teammates who thought she didn't belong in sniper school. Sergeant Blackwood made it his mission to break her spirit and prove women couldn't handle combat. But when real bullets started flying, they discovered she carried the legacy of a Medal of Honor recipient. Camp Pendleton stretched across the California coastline like a monument to military precision, its sprawling training facilities and rifle ranges echoing with the crack of gunfire from dawn to dusk. The Scout Sniper School occupied a specialized section of the base where the Marine Corps trained its most elite marksmen in the deadly art of precision shooting. The morning fog rolled in from the Pacific Ocean, providing natural concealment for training exercises that simulated the harsh realities of combat environments. Inside the barracks and classrooms, the atmosphere was charged with testosterone and competitive intensity, where every shot counted and failure meant elimination from one of the military's most prestigious programs. Corporal Victoria Caney stood 5 feet 6 inches tall and possessed the kind of quiet intensity that made people underestimate her until it was too late. At 24, she had already distinguished herself as one of the finest marksmen in her infantry unit. But her acceptance into Scout Sniper School had been met with skepticism and outright hostility from her 23 male classmates. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her green eyes held the steady focus of someone who had learned to hit targets at distances that most people couldn't even see clearly. Victoria carried herself with a confidence that came from years of training. But she also bore the weight of expectations and prejudices that followed every woman who dared to enter traditionally male military occupations. She had grown up on a ranch in Montana, where her grandfather had taught her to shoot before she could properly hold a rifle, but she kept that part of her background private. The other students saw only what they wanted to see: a woman who didn't belong in their exclusive brotherhood of warriors. What they didn't know was that Victoria's grandfather had been more than just a rancher who enjoyed hunting. Master Sergeant Joseph Caney had been one of the most legendary snipers in Marine Corps history, a Vietnam veteran whose confirmed kills and tactical innovations had become the stuff of military legend. The harassment began on Victoria's first day at sniper school and escalated with each passing week. Sergeant Ryan Blackwood, a combat veteran with 2 deployments to Afghanistan, had made it his personal mission to prove that women had no place in elite military units. His campaign of intimidation was systematic and cruel, designed to break Victoria's spirit and force her to quit before she could complete the program. Blackwood's influence over the other students was absolute, and his hostility toward Victoria created an environment where she faced not just the normal challenges of sniper training, but also the additional burden of proving herself worthy of respect that was freely given to her male counterparts. Victoria's decision to endure the harassment rather than report it or request a transfer was based on a promise she had made to her grandfather before his death. Master Sergeant Caney had instilled in her the belief that true warriors were defined not by their gender or their background, but by their ability to perform under pressure and their commitment to protecting others who couldn't protect themselves. "Granddaughter," he had told her during their last conversation, "the military will test you in ways that have nothing to do with your ability to shoot straight or think clearly. They'll test your character, your resolve, and your willingness to stand up for what's right, even when everyone else is against you. That's when you'll discover whether you're truly ready to carry the responsibility that comes with being a sniper. Victoria understood that quitting sniper school would validate every prejudice and stereotype that Blackwood and his followers held about women in combat roles. More importantly, it would betray the legacy of excellence that her grandfather had established through decades of distinguished service. She made the conscious decision to endure whatever harassment came her way while focusing on the training that would make her the kind of sniper her grandfather would have been proud of. Victoria's strategy for surviving sniper school was based on the same principles her grandfather had taught her about hunting and marksmanship: patience, observation, and precise execution. She would ignore the verbal harassment and social isolation while concentrating on mastering every aspect of the curriculum. Her plan was to let her performance speak for itself, demonstrating through consistent excellence that she belonged in the program regardless of what her classmates thought about her gender. But Blackwood had his own plan for ensuring Victoria's failure. As the senior student in the program, he had influence over team assignments, training partnerships, and the informal social dynamics that could make or break a student's experience. He systematically excluded Victoria from study groups, assigned her to teams where her partners would deliberately sabotage her performance, and created situations where she would be blamed for failures that weren't her fault. The psychological warfare was sophisticated and relentless. Blackwood would ask Victoria technical questions in front of the class that were designed to embarrass her challenge her tactical decisions during field exercises, and make comments about her physical capabilities that were calculated to undermine her confidence. His goal was to create enough doubt in Victoria's mind that she would begin to question her own abilities and eventually quit the program voluntarily. Victoria's first major test came during a field exercise that required students to work in pairs to identify and engage targets at various distances while avoiding detection by opposing forces. Blackwood deliberately paired Victoria with his closest ally, Corporal Martinez, with instructions to ensure that their team would fail the exercise in a way that would make Victoria appear incompetent. The exercise took place in the hills surrounding Camp Pendleton, where students had to navigate challenging terrain while maintaining communication with their partners and accurately engaging targets that appeared at random intervals. Victoria quickly identified the optimal positions for observation and shooting, but Martinez ignored her recommendations and insisted on positions that provided poor visibility and limited fields of fire. When targets began appearing, Victoria's shots were consistently accurate despite the poor positioning. But Martinez deliberately missed his targets and then blamed Victoria's tactical decisions for their team's poor performance. The instructors, unaware of the sabotage, noted the team's failure in their records and questioned Victoria's ability to work effectively with partners. But Victoria had anticipated this kind of interference and had been documenting her recommendations and Martinez's responses. She said nothing during the debrief, but she was building a case that would eventually expose the systematic campaign against her. The harassment escalated during the third week of training when Victoria found an anonymous note in her locker suggesting that she voluntarily withdraw from the program to avoid embarrassing herself and endangering her teammates. The note was accompanied by several printed articles about women who had failed in various military training programs with passages highlighted that emphasized the physical and psychological limitations that supposedly made women unsuitable for combat roles. Victoria recognized the handwriting as belonging to one of Blackwood's followers, but she also understood that the note represented a coordinated effort to break her psychologically. The articles had been carefully selected to reinforce every doubt and insecurity that a woman in her position might experience, and the timing coincided with a particularly challenging phase of training that tested students' mental resilience as much as their shooting skills. Rather than being intimidated by the note, Victoria used it as motivation to push herself even harder. She began arriving at the range an hour before the official training began and staying an hour after it ended, using the extra time to practice the precision shooting techniques her grandfather had taught her. Her scores on the qualification tests were consistently among the highest in the class, but Blackwood and his followers attributed her success to luck rather than skill. Victoria's situation began to attract attention from unexpected sources as word of her exceptional marksmanship spread beyond the sniper school. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, the senior instructor for the program, had been observing the dynamics within the class and was troubled by what he saw. Rodriguez was a career Marine with enough experience to recognize both exceptional talent and systematic harassment when he encountered them. During a conversation with the school's commanding officer, Rodriguez expressed concern about the treatment Victoria was receiving and suggested that her performance warranted closer observation. "Sir, I've been training snipers for 15 years, and I've never seen a student with her natural ability. Her fundamentals are perfect, her tactical thinking is sound, and her psychological resilience is extraordinary. But she's being subjected to harassment that would have broken most students by now." The commanding officer, Colonel Sarah Chen, was a combat veteran who had faced her own challenges as a woman in the military. She understood the delicate balance between allowing students to develop the mental toughness required for combat and preventing harassment that could damage both individual students and the integrity of the training program. She authorized Rodriguez to monitor the situation more closely and intervene if necessary, to ensure that all students received fair treatment. The breakthrough came during a complex field exercise that simulated urban combat conditions, where students had to identify and engage targets while avoiding civilian casualties and coordinating with ground forces. The exercise was designed to test not only shooting skills, but also decision-making under pressure and the ability to adapt to rapidly changing tactical situations. Victoria was assigned to a team led by Blackwood, who planned to use the exercise as an opportunity to demonstrate her unsuitability for combat roles. He positioned her in a location with limited visibility and poor communication, expecting that she would be unable to effectively engage targets or coordinate with the rest of the team. But Victoria's grandfather had taught her that the best snipers were those who could adapt to any situation and make the most of whatever resources were available. She quickly identified an alternative position that provided better visibility while remaining concealed from opposing forces. From this position, she was able to engage multiple targets with precision while providing accurate intelligence about enemy movements to the rest of her team. Her performance during the exercise was so exceptional that it drew attention from the exercise controllers, who noted her tactical adaptability and precise shooting in their after-action reports. For the first time since arriving at sniper school, Victoria received public recognition for her abilities from the instructing staff. As the program approached its final phase, Blackwood realized that his campaign to force Victoria out of sniper school was failing. Her consistent high performance and growing recognition from the instructors threatened to expose the harassment she had been enduring and potentially damage his own reputation as a leader among the students. Desperate to prevent Victoria from graduating, Blackwood began planning what he considered the ultimate test of her abilities. The final exercise would be a live-fire training mission in the Nevada desert, where students would use actual ammunition in a simulated combat environment. As the senior student, Blackwood had input into team assignments and tactical planning, and he intended to use this influence to create a situation where Victoria would fail spectacularly. His plan was to assign Victoria to his team for the final exercise, where he could control her role and ensure that she was placed in situations where failure was inevitable. He would give her assignments that were beyond her capabilities, position her where she couldn't succeed, and then use her failure as proof that women didn't belong in elite military units. But Blackwood's plan was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of Victoria's true capabilities and the extent of her training. He was about to discover that there was much more to Victoria Caney than anyone at the sniper school had realized. The final exercise began at dawn in the Nevada desert, where 24 students were divided into 6 teams for a complex live-fire scenario that would test everything they had learned during their months of training. The exercise was designed to simulate a hostage rescue mission, with students required to eliminate hostile targets while avoiding civilian casualties and coordinating with ground forces played by instructors and advanced students from other programs. Victoria found herself assigned to Team Alpha under Blackwood's leadership exactly as he had planned. He positioned her as the team's communications specialist, a role that would keep her away from the primary shooting positions and limit her ability to demonstrate her marksmanship skills. The other team members, all loyal to Blackwood, were instructed to ignore her tactical suggestions and treat her as a liability rather than an asset. But the carefully planned exercise took a deadly turn when real gunfire erupted from positions that weren't supposed to contain any participants. A group of armed mercenaries had infiltrated the training area, turning the simulation into an actual combat situation. The mercenaries had been hired by a foreign intelligence service to steal classified training materials and eliminate any witnesses to their operation. Team Alpha found themselves pinned down by accurate rifle fire from an elevated position, with one team member wounded and their communications equipment destroyed by enemy fire. Blackwood, despite his combat experience, was paralyzed by the unexpected transition from training to actual combat, and his tactical decisions were confused and ineffective. As the situation deteriorated rapidly, with Team Alpha trapped in a depression with limited cover and facing elimination by a superior enemy force, Victoria made a decision that would reveal her true identity and capabilities. Ignoring Blackwood's panicked orders to stay down and wait for rescue, she began moving with the fluid precision of someone who had been trained for exactly this type of situation. Victoria's movements were nothing like the tentative actions of a student sniper. They were the calculated maneuvers of a professional who had been trained by one of the most legendary snipers in Marine Corps history. She identified the enemy positions with a speed and accuracy that stunned her teammates, and her tactical analysis of the situation was delivered with the confidence of someone who had studied similar scenarios for years. 3 shooters on the ridge at 11 o'clock, approximately 400 meters. She reported calmly, her voice carrying none of the panic that had infected the rest of the team. 1 machine gunner in the rocks at 2 o'clock, 300 meters. They're trying to pin us down while a 4th shooter flanks us from the left. Blackwood stared at Victoria in shock as she transformed from the student he had been tormenting into a professional warrior whose capabilities far exceeded anything he had imagined. "Caney, what the hell are you doing? Get down and wait for backup." But Victoria was already moving, using terrain features and natural concealment with an expertise that came from years of training under the most demanding instructor imaginable. "Sergeant, with respect, backup isn't coming fast enough. We have wounded, and those shooters are about to overrun our position. I'm going to eliminate the threat." The confidence in her voice and the precision of her movements made it clear that Victoria wasn't asking for permission. She was informing her team leader of her intentions before executing a plan that would save all their lives. What happened next would be analyzed and discussed in military training circles for years to come. Victoria engaged the enemy shooters with a level of precision and tactical awareness that defied everything her classmates thought they knew about her capabilities. Her first shot eliminated the machine gunner at 300 meters, a perfect headshot that instantly neutralized the most dangerous threat to her team. Her second and third shots, fired in rapid succession, took out the 2 rifle shooters on the ridge before they could adjust their positions or return effective fire. Each shot was placed with surgical precision, demonstrating not just exceptional marksmanship, but also an understanding of human anatomy and ballistics that went far beyond basic sniper training. When the 4th shooter attempted to flank the team's position, Victoria anticipated his movement and engaged him before he could threaten her wounded teammate. Her 4th shot was the most impressive of all, a moving target at over 400 meters engaged while she was repositioning to avoid return fire. In less than 3 minutes, Victoria had eliminated 4 enemy combatants and saved the lives of her entire team. The transformation from harassed student to lethal professional was so complete and dramatic that her teammates could only stare in stunned silence as she calmly reported the elimination of all hostile contacts. As the immediate threat was eliminated and backup forces arrived to secure the training area, Victoria's teammates struggled to process what they had just witnessed. The woman they had dismissed as unqualified for sniper training had just demonstrated capabilities that exceeded those of most experienced combat veterans. Her shooting was flawless. Her tactical decision-making was superior to that of her team leader, and her composure under fire was that of a seasoned professional. Blackwood, whose leadership had crumbled under the pressure of actual combat, found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about military capability and gender roles. The woman he had spent months trying to break had just saved his life and the lives of his teammates with skills that he couldn't match despite his combat experience and years of training. As medical personnel treated the wounded team member and investigators began processing the scene, Victoria calmly cleaned her rifle and prepared her after-action report with the same methodical precision she brought to everything else. But her classmates could see that something fundamental had changed the quiet student who had endured months of harassment was gone, replaced by a confident professional whose true capabilities were finally visible. In the aftermath of the firefight, Victoria experienced a moment of uncertainty about revealing the full extent of her background and training. She had spent months hiding her true capabilities to avoid drawing attention to herself and her family's military legacy. But the events of the day had made it impossible to maintain her cover any longer. As her classmates gathered around her with questions and expressions of amazement, Victoria realized that the time for secrecy had passed. Her grandfather's training had saved lives, and his legacy deserved to be acknowledged rather than hidden. The harassment she had endured had been based on ignorance and prejudice, but it had also tested her character in ways that her grandfather would have approved of. "There's something you all need to know about me," Victoria said quietly, her voice carrying the authority that came from proven performance under fire. "My grandfather was Master Sergeant Joseph Caney, and he trained me from the time I was 6 years old." The revelation of Victoria's true background sent shock waves through the sniper school that extended far beyond her immediate classmates. Master Sergeant Joseph Caney was a legend in Marine Corps sniper circles, a Vietnam veteran whose confirmed kills and tactical innovations had influenced sniper training for decades. His service record was classified at the highest levels, but his reputation among military professionals was unmatched. The fact that his granddaughter had been training at Camp Pendleton under an assumed level of experience while enduring systematic harassment created a scandal that reached the highest levels of command. Colonel Chen immediately ordered a full investigation into the treatment Victoria had received, while military historians began examining the implications of having a second-generation Caney in the sniper program. But the most immediate impact was on Victoria's classmates, who suddenly understood that they had been witnessing the emergence of a generational talent that had been deliberately concealed from them. The transition from anonymous student to recognized prodigy was not without its challenges. Victoria found herself the subject of intense scrutiny from military officials who wanted to understand how she had been trained and what other capabilities she might possess. Her every action was analyzed and compared to her grandfather's legendary performance, creating pressure that was different from but no less intense than the harassment she had previously endured. Some of her classmates struggled to accept that the woman they had dismissed was actually superior to them in every measurable aspect of sniper training. Their prejudices had been so deeply ingrained that they found it easier to attribute her success to her grandfather's reputation rather than her own abilities. Blackwood, in particular, had difficulty accepting that his campaign of harassment had been directed against someone whose military pedigree far exceeded his own. His authority among the students evaporated as they realized that he had been systematically tormenting a Marine whose family had contributed more to the Corps than most entire units. The climactic moment came during a formal ceremony 3 weeks after the desert incident, when the full extent of the Caney family's military legacy was revealed to the assembled students and faculty. Colonel Chen had invited a special guest to the ceremony, General Patricia Morrison, who had served as Master Sergeant Caney's commanding officer during his final deployment and who possessed the security clearances necessary to discuss his classified achievements. Master Sergeant Joseph Caney, General Morrison announced to the assembled Marines, was not just a sniper. He was the architect of modern sniper doctrine and the founder of techniques that are still classified at the highest levels. His service record includes operations that have never been publicly acknowledged, and his contributions to Marine Corps capability are immeasurable. The general then turned to Victoria, who stood at attention in her dress blue uniform. "Corporal Caney, your performance during the recent incident demonstrates that you have not only inherited your grandfather's abilities, but have the potential to exceed them. Your grandfather would be proud of the Marine you have become." The ceremony concluded with the presentation of the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal to Victoria for her actions during the desert firefight. But the real recognition came from her classmates, who finally understood that they had been privileged to witness the emergence of a legendary sniper. The final validation of Victoria's place in the sniper community came not from official recognition, but from a private conversation with Blackwood, who approached her after the ceremony with obvious humility and regret. The sergeant, who had spent months trying to break her spirit, now stood before her with the respect that should have been offered from the beginning. "Corporal Caney," Blackwood said, his voice carrying genuine remorse, "I owe you an apology that goes beyond words. I let my prejudices blind me to your abilities, and I created an environment that was unworthy of the Marine Corps and unworthy of your grandfather's legacy." Victoria's response demonstrated the character that her grandfather had instilled in her. "Sergeant, we all have things to learn. What matters is that we learn them and become better Marines because of the experience." The handshake that followed marked not just the end of their conflict, but the beginning of a new chapter in Marine Corps sniper training. Victoria's graduation from sniper school was marked by achievements that set new standards for the program. She finished first in her class, with scores that exceeded previous records in multiple categories, and her tactical innovations during field exercises were incorporated into the official curriculum. The harassment she had endured became the subject of a comprehensive review that led to significant changes in how the Marine Corps addressed gender integration in elite training programs. Blackwood faced disciplinary action for his role in creating a hostile training environment, but Victoria's recommendation for leniency, based on his acknowledgement of wrongdoing and commitment to change, resulted in counseling and additional training rather than career-ending punishment. Several other students who had participated in the harassment also received corrective action, but the focus was on education and improvement rather than punishment. The incident sparked Corps-wide discussions about unconscious bias, the importance of merit-based evaluation, and the need to create training environments where all Marines could succeed based on their abilities rather than their demographics. Victoria's success opened doors for other women in sniper training and special operations roles, proving that gender was irrelevant to combat effectiveness when proper training and evaluation standards were applied. Her story became a case study in military leadership schools, demonstrating how prejudice and harassment could mask exceptional talent and damage unit effectiveness. The techniques and innovations that Victoria developed during her training were classified and incorporated into advanced sniper programs, continuing her grandfather's legacy of contributing to Marine Corps capability. She was selected for assignment to a special operations unit where her skills could be fully utilized, and her success in that role led to further opportunities for women in similar positions. Most importantly, Victoria's experience led to the establishment of mentorship programs that connected experienced snipers with new students, ensuring that future generations would benefit from the wisdom and experience of those who had come before them. 2 years after graduating from sniper school, Victoria stood on a hill overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the same view her grandfather had enjoyed during his own training at Camp Pendleton decades earlier. In her hands was a letter from the Marine Corps Historical Division informing her that she had been selected to write the official biography of Master Sergeant Joseph Caney. As she read the letter, Victoria smiled, understanding that her grandfather's legacy would live on not just through her own service, but through the inspiration his story would provide to future generations of Marines. The harassment she had endured had tested her character, but it had also prepared her to carry forward a tradition of excellence that would honor both her grandfather's memory and the Corps he had served so faithfully.